Hi, my name is James Goodman. I'm here today to talk about identifying risk. So, first of all, what is risk identification? So, risk identification is a process of determining risks that could potentially prevent the program, enterprise, or investment from achieving its objectives. So, risk management, another part of risk. Risk management is a structural approach to managing uncertainty that includes actions taken to identify, assess, monitor and reduce the impact of risk to your business. Risks are events, situations or circumstances which lead to negative consequences or to your business. A good risk management plan with appropriate risk management strategies can minimize costly and stressful problems and may also reduce insurance claims and premiums. Risk communication. Exchange of information, opinion and establishment of an effective dialogue are among those responsible for assessing, minimizing and regulating risks as well as those who may be affected by the outcomes of those risks. Fundamental steps of risk management. So you can see on the map here, this is the stages of the fundamental steps of risk management. So you start off with identifying the risk, then you move into the impact study of the risk, then you prioritize analysis of the risk as well, track the risk, and then go into terms of planning, implementing and progressing monitoring. So that terms of sort of just planning, seeing which ways you could reduce the risk. Alright, examples of risk. So visiting a project site, risk around the office, which includes stairs, wet floors, carrying heavy objects, testing materials in the laboratory. Any engineering activity can involve risk. The best way to overcome is identifying the risk in the first place and setting up an appropriate management plan. So preventable measures. Avoidance. So avoid the risk totally and withdraw from the site visit or don't become involved with the risk. Reduction. Reduce the risk from occurring. Think of ways that the risk can be reduced from occurring. For example, when visiting a site near moving objects, wear a fluoro safety shirt. Sharing. Share the information you have about the risk to other members of the workplace and ensure that they are well aware of the risk. Retention. Accept the risk and realize that the budget might increase or ensure that the risk has been removed or reduced. Risk assessment. So risk assessment is an important step in protecting your workers and your business, as well as complying with the law. It helps focus on high priority risks in your workplace, the ones with the potential to cause harm, and in many instances, straightforward measures can readily control risk. For example, ensuring spillages are cleaned up promptly so people do not slip, or cupboards, doors kept closed to ensure people do not trip. For most, that means simple, cheap and effective measures to ensure your most valuable asset, your workforce, is protected. The law does not accept you to eliminate all risks, but you are required to protect people as far as it as reasonable practice. So, 5 steps of risk management. Identifying hazards, decide who might be harmed, evaluate the risk, record and implement your findings, and review your assessment. Identify the hazards. First, you need to work out how people could harm. When you work in a place every day, it is easy to overlook some hazards. Decide who might be harmed. For each hazard, you need to be clear about who might be harmed. It will help you identify the best way of managing the risk. That doesn't mean listening to everyone by name, but rather identifying groups of people. Alright, evaluate the risk. Having spotted the hazards, you are then required to make a decision as how to manage the identified hazards. The law requires you to do everything reasonable, practically, to protect people from harm. You can work this out for yourself, but the easiest way is to compare what you're doing with good practice. First, look at what you're already doing. Think about what controls you have in the place and how the work is organised. Then compare this with good practice and see if there are any more you should be doing to bring the environment up to standard. Right, record and implement your findings. Putting the results of your risk assessment into practice will make a difference when looking for people and on your business. Recording the results of the risk assessment and sharing them with your staff encourages good practice and ensures that all employees are following the same guidelines. If you have fewer than 5 employees, you are not required to record the information. So, writing down your results, keep it simple. For example, tripping over rubbish bins, bins provided, staff instructed, weekly housekeeping checks. Fume from welding, local exhaust ventilation used when regular checked. Right, review your assessment. Few workplaces stay the same. Sooner or later you will bring in new equipment, substances and procedures that could lead to new hazards. It makes sense therefore to review what you are doing on an ongoing basis. Alright, now we're going to go into a case study about how risk assessment was used but wasn't used correctly. So, for example, in 2010 a civil engineer named John Smith was surveying a car park and was hit by a car. The question here is, why was John hit by the car? Did he complete a risk assessment before heading out to the site for the survey? It turns out that he did complete a risk assessment, which means he was following his protocol, but he didn't implement the prevention methods he had listed in his risk assessment. Someone had videoed the experience. It clearly shows how John wasn't watching the moving objects according to his own risk assessment. So here is an example of John's risk assessment he completed before going out to the site. So it shows that he identified the risk and listed preventable measures, but unfortunately he didn't use them. Some of the preventable measures that he could have used was wearing a fluoro shirt. This would ensure that he was clearly visible. He could also have had someone watching for moving objects and could have been watching the traffic more carefully. This clearly indicates the importance of not only completing a risk assessment before visiting a site, but the importance of putting your preventable measures into practice. The importance of a risk assessment. So the main aim is to make sure that no one gets hurt or becomes ill. Accidents and ill health care can ruin lives and can also affect businesses if output is lost. Machinery is damaged, insurance costs increase, or if you have to go to court. Therefore, carrying out a risk assessment, preparing and implementing a safety statement and keeping both up to date will not in themselves prevent accidents and will ill health, but they will play a crucial part in reducing the likelihood. The two most important parts of a risk assessment is identifying the risk and then implementing the preventable measures that you outlined. Right, so in today's lecture about identifying risks, it clearly states that when dealing with engineering activities, it's important to know about the risk involved. The best method to deal with risks is to have an understanding of them, identifying the risk, and then thinking about how you can reduce and remove the risk. The most important part of risk management is not only listing preventable actions, but then implement them. Thank you very much for listening to my conversation about identifying risks. Have a good day.